Hello everyone, tonight we will embark on a journey. A journey not across the stars or through ancient ruins, but inward into the 3 pounds of miraculous soggy tissue you carry between your ears. We're going to explore the quiet, stunning truth that what you call reality isn't a solid, objective place you observe. It's a beautiful, intricate story your brain is constantly, brilliantly telling you. And here's the funny part. It's a story you co-author moment by moment without even realizing it. You're living inside a self-generated, perfectly curated movie, and tonight we're going to peek behind the curtain to see how the projector works. It's a journey so strange, so profound, that it just might make you wonder if you're even awake right now. Spoiler alert, you'll probably survive, but your old ideas about reality might not. Now, before we drift too far, I'd like to ask a small, gentle favor. If you find yourself enjoying these calming explorations and returning night after night, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing. It's a simple gesture, but it helps more curious minds find their way here, and it truly means the world to me. Also, I'm always fascinated to know, where in the world are you listening from? Maybe you're nestled in a quiet room in Iowa, or perhaps you're listening from a cozy apartment high above the bustling streets of Los Angeles. Whatever the place, whatever the hour, I'd love to know where you are as you listen. Feel free to leave a comment below. Now close your eyes if you like. Take a slow, steady breath. And let's begin. You are sitting here listening to these words, and in this very moment, an endless stream of information is pouring into your mind. The light from your screen, the sound of my voice, the feeling of the chair beneath you, the temperature of the room. You experience all of this at once, and it forms one seamless experience. Most people assume they are experiencing the world directly, as if a camera were recording an exact, truthful scene. But like a masterful magician, your brain is doing something far more sophisticated. It isn't just recording, it is creating. Let's begin with what you see. Light from the outside world enters your eyes, and a collection of specialized cells at the back of your eye called the retina translate those photons into electrical signals. These signals are then sent along the optic nerve to your visual cortex. So far, it sounds like a straightforward recording process, much like a video camera. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Instead of simply displaying those signals, your brain begins a complex process of interpretation, prediction, and gap filling. It's not a mirror, it is a painter, and it's constantly at work. One of the clearest pieces of evidence for this is your blind spot. Yes, you have a literal blind spot in your vision. It's the area where the optic nerve exits the retina, and because there are no light receptors there, you can't see anything at all. And yet, you never notice. You don't see a floating black hole in your field of vision because your brain so cleverly fills it in with the surrounding colors and patterns. It guesses seamlessly, without a moment's hesitation, and you completely trust the illusion it creates. This happens millions of times a day without your conscious awareness. It's as if there's a tiny artist inside your head, always editing the picture you see. You might ask, why would the brain do that? Why wouldn't it just show us what's really there? The answer is efficiency. Your brain isn't designed to see everything. It's designed to see what it needs to in order to survive. Processing every single photon that enters your eye would be a terrible waste of energy. So instead of passively receiving it, actively predicts. One of the leading theories in neuroscience calls this the predictive processing model. According to this model, your brain is constantly generating hypotheses about the world and then only looking for sensory signals to confirm them. If the signals match the prediction, everything is fine. If not, it updates its model. Think of it this way. When you're walking through a garden in San Diego, you don't need to pay attention to every single leaf, every flower, or every pebble. Your brain has already predicted what should be there. You only need to pay attention when something unexpected happens, like a squirrel darting out from the bushes. Your brain is always in assumption mode, and that makes it much faster and more energy efficient. A little-known historical fact is that even in the 18th century, philosophers and scientists debated the nature of vision. Scottish philosopher David Hume argued that we couldn't trust what we see, as all perception is an interpretation of the mind, an idea that modern neuroscience has largely proven true. Now let's consider another example. Have you ever seen an optical illusion that made you squint and ask, how is that even possible? That's when you are looking directly at one of the brain's secrets. Take the hollow face illusion. When you look at the back of a mask, which is concave, your brain insists that it's convex. Why? Because your brain is wired to expect faces to bulge outward. The data from your eyes says the mask is concave, but your brain says, that can't be right. I've seen billions of faces and they're always convex. In that conflict, expectation wins. It would rather create a convincing illusion than accept a strange reality. This doesn't just apply to vision. Every single one of your senses is a masterful illusionist, and we will explore that in the following chapters. But before we move on, let's sit for a moment with what we have just discussed. Everything you are seeing right now, from the glint of a light on a mountain in Utah to the words on your screen, is a constructed work of imagination. A beautiful one, a useful one, and an incredibly reliable one, but a construction nonetheless. You are living inside a painting that you are also painting. One of the long-standing questions that neuroscientists and philosophers still debate is whether there is a truly objective reality that exists outside of our perception, or if all we have are these shared illusions. Now let your eyes, that loyal yet deceptive assistant, rest for a moment. Close them. Listen. Let these words gently wash over you. We are going to move on to one of the brain's most subtle illusions. We are going to explore how you don't just hear the world. You are composing the soundtrack to it. But let's not rush. Let's take our time, as the best journeys are not sprints, but meandering walks through interesting landscapes. Your visual system, this brilliant painter we've just met, is working at a staggering pace. It's taking in 300 million photons of information every second. Yet, your consciousness only processes a tiny fraction of that. Your brain, through a process called predictive coding, doesn't just receive data. It predicts what's coming and only corrects itself when there's a mismatch. This is why you can walk into a dark room and still feel your way around. Your brain's model of the room, built from memory, is so strong that it doesn't even need perfect sensory input. It just assumes, and more often than not, it's right. It's the reason a shadow can look like a lurking figure for a fleeting moment. Or why you might think you see someone you know in a crowded street, only to realize it was a complete stranger. It's an efficient system that sometimes gets it hilariously wrong, like mistaking a fire hydrant for a person at a distance. Don't worry, we all do it. The brain, in a way, is a kind of benevolent dictator, curating your experience without your permission. It is deciding what's important and what isn't, allowing you to focus on the things that matter, like finding your keys and ignoring the millions of irrelevant details. Like the precise angle of every dust particle floating in the air. This creative interpretation is not a modern phenomenon. For centuries, artists have intuitively known this. They paint not what is, but what seems to be, using perspective and light to create the illusion of depth on a flat canvas. Leonardo da Vinci, the quintessential Renaissance man, wrote extensively in his notebooks about how the eye perceives understanding, that a simple drawing of a circle was not what the eye saw, but what the mind interpreted. He knew the mind filled in the blanks, smoothed over the rough edges, and corrected for perspective. The historical record suggests that the use of perspective in art was developed long before the full neurological understanding of how the brain creates a sense of depth. Artists were, in a way, the first applied neuroscientists. The illusion of vision extends beyond the obvious. Think of your own eyes. They are constantly making tiny, rapid movements called saccades, scanning your environment. During each of these rapid movements, which happen 3 to 4 times a second, your vision technically blurs, and for a split second, you are blind. But you never notice this. Your brain simply edits out the blur and the momentary darkness, stitching the visual field back together again. It's like a film editor, smoothing over a jump cut to create a seamless scene. You experience a continuous flowing world because your brain is a master of continuity. Without this editing, the world would be a jarring, flickering mess, but your brain would rather invent stability than show you the truth of your own visual system's limitations. It's a remarkable piece of technological deception that is a cornerstone of your waking life. What does it all mean for you, Al? In this quiet moment, it means that you can sit back and relax, knowing that your eyes are doing so much more than just looking. They are collaborating with your brain to build a beautiful version of the world. It's a version that's useful, and that's the most important thing. It might not be a perfect raw truth, but it's the only truth that matters for you. It allows you to navigate a crowded street, to recognize the face of a loved one, and to find beauty in the simplest of things, like the way sunlight filters through a window. The fact that the system is an illusion is a testament to its genius, not its flaw. So as you breathe slowly and feel your body sinking into the bed or the chair, remember the power of this beautiful lie. Remember that your eyes, marvelous as they are just one small part of the act of seeing. The real magic is what happens behind them. And the grand illusion of reality has only just begun. We'll be moving on from the visual to the auditory, but not before you are fully ready. Just keep breathing gently and let the idea that you are the creator of your own perception settle into your mind. What a strange and wonderful truth. One that still occupies the minds of leading academics in Harvard and Princeton, who still debate the very nature of consciousness and the validity of a unified field of perception. They still haven't figured it out. But you're now a little closer to understanding the mystery. You're on the path. Now, relax. Your eyes have had their rest. And now, let's let your ears lead the way. Most people think of hearing as a passive process. Sound waves hit the ear, and you hear them. But just like with vision, it's not nearly that simple. Your auditory system is also a magician, one who doesn't just listen, but interprets, predicts, and even invents. Think about a quiet evening in a small town in Georgia. You might hear the crickets, a distant dog barking, and the steady hum of a ceiling fan. These sounds are not just vibrations. They are a symphony composed by your brain. Sound waves enter your ear, vibrate the eardrum, and those vibrations are turned into electrical signals in your cochlea. Those signals are then sent to your auditory cortex, but that's just when the real work begins. Your brain doesn't just hear sounds. It guesses what those sounds mean, where they came from, and whether they're important. It fills in gaps, smooths over disruptions, and even creates sounds that were never there in the first place. Take speech, for example. Spoken language is incredibly complex. There are no neat pauses between words in everyday conversation, just a flowing stream of sounds. And yet, your brain has the uncanny ability to slice that stream into distinct words and even anticipate what should come next. This is part of why you can still understand someone speaking with a thick accent from Louisiana or talking through static on a bad phone line. Your brain isn't just processing sound. It's predicting the most likely meanings based on context and filling in the blanks. A classic example of this is the phonemic restoration effect. If a brief sound, such as a cough, is replaced with a noise in the middle of a word, most people still hear the full word. You didn't actually hear the missing sound, but your brain patched it over seamlessly and gave you the illusion of uninterrupted speech. It doesn't ask your permission. It just does it. And then there's the McGurk effect, a playful and slightly unsettling reminder that hearing isn't done with the ears alone. In this effect, a person is shown a visual of someone saying one syllable, e.g., G-A, while the audio plays a different syllable, e.g., B-O. What do most people perceive? Neither. They hear a fusion such as D-E. Your brain takes in what you see, and what you hear weighs both and settles on a compromise. In this case, it's wrong, but it's wrong in a very human, very logical way. Your brain is trying to make sense of conflicting inputs and settles on a solution that seems plausible, even if it's an illusion. This merging of senses happens all the time. Watching someone speak helps you understand them. That's why phone calls are more mentally taxing than face-to-face conversations. You don't realize how much you rely on lip movements and facial expressions until they're gone. Without those visual cues, your brain has to work harder to interpret what's being said, especially in noisy environments. A little-known historical fact is that linguists and psychologists debated for decades whether hearing and vision were processed separately or fused in the brain. We now know that we are multi-sensory creatures, and our senses are always in communication. Now think about something a little more familiar. Have you ever sworn your phone buzzed in your pocket, only to check and find nothing? Well, that's one of your brain's favorite tricks. It's called the phantom phone vibration illusion. Your brain expects the sensation, and when an ambiguous signal from your clothes or a muscle twitch comes in, it misinterprets it and turns it into a familiar sensation. Essentially, your brain predicted a vibration and ran with it only to be proven wrong. It's like an overeager friend always assuming you're talking to them. Your auditory system is also wired for speed. Sound processing happens in just a few dozen milliseconds, often faster than vision. That's evolutionary efficiency at its finest. Sound warns you of danger you can't see, like a twig snapping behind you as you walk in a desolate park. Your brain can't afford to take its time. It gets the signal, interprets the threat, and primes your body for action. That's also why sound can evoke such strong emotions. A baby's cry, a familiar voice, or a sudden loud bang all trigger visceral reactions. This isn't just cultural, it's biological. The amygdala, a key player in emotional processing, is tightly linked to the auditory system. Music, on the other hand, shows how sound can stir not just fear or urgency, but joy, nostalgia, longing, and even awe. Your brain doesn't just hear music, it feels it, anticipates it, and dances along in ways you might not even notice. When you listen to a melody, your brain predicts the next note based on rhythm and harmony. If the music confirms your expectation, you feel satisfied. If it surprises you in a pleasant way, you get a little rush of pleasure. That's why a well-timed chord, change, or unexpected harmony can give you goosebumps. This response isn't limited to musicians or trained ears. From infancy, humans show sensitivity to musical patterns. Studies have even found that babies can detect when a note in a simple melody is out of place. Music is embedded in our brains in ways we don't fully understand. It can change our heart rate, influence our breathing, and even modulate the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. In short, it can shift the entire mood of your internal landscape. And then there's the voice. The human voice is the most intimate and complex of all sounds. It carries information not just in the words it speaks, but in tone, pitch, rhythm, and pace. You can tell when someone is upset before they even finish a sentence. You can hear sarcasm, enthusiasm, exhaustion. You can sense hesitation in a pause, sincerity in a sigh. These subtle auditory cues are often processed unconsciously, but they color every interaction. Your brain is constantly reading between the lines, or rather between the waves. Interestingly, your own name has a special status in your brain's hierarchy. It cuts through noise like a beacon. Even in a loud room, you can pick out your name from across the room, a phenomenon known as the cocktail party effect. Your brain is always monitoring your environment for personally relevant information even when you're not consciously paying attention. It keeps one ear tuned to potential signals of importance, ready to zero in the moment something familiar arises. That filtering mechanism is crucial. Without it, you'd be overwhelmed by the constant rush of sound. Every tick, hum, footstep, and rustling leaf would compete for your attention. The brain needs a way to sort through the clutter, and it does this remarkably well. Your auditory system constantly distinguishes between signal and noise, highlighting what matters and muting the rest. This is why sudden sharp noises command your attention. Evolution has trained your brain to treat them as potential threats. A dropped plate, a slamming door, a bark in the dark. These sounds bypass your usual filtering and trigger a quick jolt of alertness. It's not always pleasant, but it's highly effective. At the other end of the spectrum are sounds designed to soothe. Nature sounds, slow rhythms, gentle white noise. All of these tap into your brain's ability to relax when the environment feels safe and predictable. Slow rhythmic sound patterns tend to slow your heartbeat and breathing, helping your nervous system wind down. This is part of why lullabies work even for adults. There's something deeply calming about a soft, repetitive melody. Interestingly, your brain can also hallucinate sound. This is more common than you might think. In moments of extreme stress fatigue or sensory deprivation, people report hearing music voices or vague murmurs. These aren't signs of madness. They're signs that your brain, in the absence of clear input, starts generating content to keep things running. It doesn't like silence, especially when it expects stimulation. That's why you might hear a phantom buzz from your phone or think someone called your name when they didn't. Your auditory system is primed to anticipate. Sometimes it overachieves. And yet, for all its quirks and illusions, the auditory system remains a marvel of engineering. It allows us to communicate, connect, and interpret the world in ways that vision alone could never manage. It gives shape to memory, texture to thought, and emotion to language. It helps us navigate both physical spaces and social ones, alerting us to danger, delight, and everything in between. When you hear a sound, you're not just receiving vibrations. You're decoding a rich stream of meaning, layering it with context, emotion, and expectation. Your ears deliver the signal, but it's your brain that brings it to life. Whether it's the trill of a bird, the laughter of a friend, or the slow, steady rhythm of a quiet voice as you drift off to sleep, each sound becomes part of your inner world, shaped, stretched, and painted with the soft brush strokes of the mind. Your ears have done their quiet work, and now it's time to feel. Touch is one of those senses we often take for granted until it's gone. You don't really notice the feeling of your socks against your ankles or the chair beneath you until something changes, like a sudden itch or the uncomfortable realization that your foot has fallen asleep. But beneath that quiet familiarity is a deeply complex and surprisingly emotional system. Touch isn't just about pressure and temperature. It's about connection awareness and the subtle ways your body maps itself onto the world. Let's start with the skin. It's your largest organ, by far, stretching across your entire body like a living suit of armor. And it's not just a protective layer. It's packed with specialized receptors that pick up a variety of signals. There are mechanoreceptors for pressure and vibration, thermoreceptors for temperature, nociceptors for pain, and even some that help track the movement and position of your limbs, a sense known as proprioception. When you run your fingers along a soft blanket, those mechanoreceptors are firing off signals that travel through the nervous system to your brain. Different types of touch are processed by different types of receptors. Some are fast and precise, helping you identify texture and fine details. Others are slower, tuned to broader sensations like warmth or the soothing stroke of a hand. All of this information travels along peripheral nerves through the spinal cord and into the brain, where it's interpreted, filtered, and turned into the rich tapestry of tactile experience. The brain doesn't just register what is touching you, but how and why. A sharp jab from the corner of a table is processed very differently than a soft pat on the back. The context, intent, and emotional meaning of a touch can dramatically shape how it feels. This is especially true for the kind of touch we get from other people. Social touch is an entire category on its own. It's why a hug can be comforting, or why a reassuring hand on the shoulder can ease anxiety. Research shows that slow, gentle touch activates a special class of nerve fibers called C-tactile afferents. These are tuned specifically for emotionally meaningful touch, like stroking or caressing, and they send signals not just to the somatosensory cortex, but also to parts of the brain involved in emotional regulation, like the insula and the anterior cingulate cortex. In other words, your brain treats a loving touch like an emotional event, not just a physical one. Even in early life, touch plays a critical role. Newborns rely heavily on skin-to-skin contact for comfort and bonding. Premature babies who receive regular touch gain weight more quickly and show improved development. Human beings are wired to need physical contact. It's as fundamental as food and sleep. We're social creatures, and touch is one of our most primal languages. Then there's the curious sense of proprioception, your body's ability to know where it is in space. You can touch your nose with your eyes closed, raise your arms without looking, or walk without staring at your feet. That's proprioception at work. It's often called the sixth sense, though. It doesn't deal with ghosts or intuition. It comes from sensors in your muscles, tendons, and joints that constantly update your brain about the position and movement of your limbs. Without it, even simple tasks would become impossible. People who have lost proprioceptive ability due to rare neurological conditions or injury describe the experience as deeply disorienting. They must watch their limbs to move them, and even then the motion feels foreign, like piloting a remote-controlled machine. It's a reminder of just how seamless and invisible this sense normally is, and how much of our bodily awareness depends on signals we never consciously notice. One of the most fascinating proofs of the brain's tactile construction is the rubber hand illusion. In this experiment, a participant's real hand is hidden from view while a fake rubber hand is placed in front of them. Both the real and rubber hands are stroked with a brush at the same time. After a short while, many people begin to feel as though the rubber hand is their own. The brain, seeing the brush on the rubber hand and feeling the touch on the real hand, concludes they must be the same thing. It updates your body model accordingly. Voila! You adopt a new plastic limb without question. It's a remarkable testament to how your brain is constantly updating a model of your body and how easily that model can be fooled. A little-known fact from the history of medicine is that doctors in the 16th century, like Ambroise Paré, noted that amputees often felt pain in their missing limbs. They called it phantom limb pain, and for centuries, it was considered a psychological issue. Only in the 20th century did we begin to understand that the feeling wasn't imaginary at all. It was a neurological reality, a manifestation of the brain's body map that hadn't been updated. The brain's ability to remap and reinterpret extends beyond the body. It's part of how you understand space itself. Your brain doesn't just record where objects are. It creates a working model of your environment. You don't see a mug on a table. You experience the mug on the table within reach. That reachability is part of the perception. Your brain encodes affordances, what actions are possible in a given environment. This means you don't just see what is, you see what can be done. This is why the brain is so good at navigating. When you walk into your living room in Oklahoma, your brain doesn't just see a couch, it sees a place to sit. It doesn't just see a table, it sees a place to set your tea. It's an action-oriented reality, and your brain is constantly calculating the possibilities. This intricate constructed reality is also a matter of focus. At any given moment, your senses are bombarded with millions of bits of information, but you consciously notice only a tiny fraction. You might not hear the hum of your refrigerator until it turns off. You probably weren't aware of the feeling of your shirt on your shoulders until just now. That's your brain doing some very elegant housekeeping, discarding what it deems irrelevant, so you can focus on what matters. This filtering is handled largely by the thalamus, often described as the brain's relay station. It decides which signals are important enough to be passed on to higher brain areas. Combined with your prefrontal cortex, which governs attention and executive function, the brain curates your moment-to-moment experience. You're not experiencing everything. You're experiencing a highlight reel carefully tailored to your needs. This is what allows you to find your car keys in a messy kitchen or focus on a conversation in a loud restaurant. It's a beautifully selective system, and the filtering works in both directions. Your brain not only filters incoming sensory information, it can also inhibit sensations when necessary. For example, during an intense moment of physical activity like a football game in Texas, a player might not feel an injury until long after the play is over. The brain prioritizing performance over pain temporarily suppresses the pain signals. It's a survival mechanism, but it also shows that your brain is not a passive recipient of touch and pain, but an active moderator. It's like a sound engineer in a recording studio turning some faders up and others down to create the perfect mix. The pain is still there in the raw data, but your conscious experience of it is changed. This is a deep and ongoing debate among neuroscientists. How much of our conscious experience is a direct representation of reality, and how much of it is a product of our brain's internal models? The fact that we can be fooled by a phantom limb or a rubber hand suggests that the internal model is a very strong and compelling force. It would seem from all the evidence that our brain's model of reality is so good, so convincing, that it overrides the raw objective data. It prefers a coherent, albeit slightly fictional story to a chaotic, truthful one. And in the end, it's that story that allows you to function, to connect with others, and to feel safe and secure in your own skin. The skin, a marvel of engineering, is merely the input device. The real magic, as always, is what's happening just a few inches away inside the dark silence of your mind. But let's go a little deeper. The very neurons that carry the sensation of touch also carry a surprising amount of emotional weight. When someone you care about touches your arm, the signal isn't just pressure, it's comfort. Your brain is wired to attach meaning to every interaction. This is not some philosophical flourish, but a biological reality. The ancient Greeks, for instance, had a complex understanding of the senses. Aristotle believed there were 5, but he and his contemporaries often linked them to the elements. They saw touch as an earthly sense connected to matter, but they couldn't have imagined the intricate pathways that connect touch to the deepest parts of your limbic system, the home of your emotions. Think about a simple hug. A hug is a powerful gesture that can reduce feelings of stress and anxiety. When you receive a hug, your body releases oxytocin, a hormone associated with bonding and trust. This is a clear example of how a physical sensation can have a profound chemical and emotional effect. It's the brain's way of rewarding you for a social connection, solidifying the importance of touch for a social creature. It's a primal form of communication that bypasses words and goes straight to the core of your being. This is a part of the reason why a hand held during a moment of grief can be more comforting than any words could ever be. It's not just a physical sensation, it's a direct transmission of emotional support. And this incredible system is not without its strange quirks. There are cases of people with a condition called tactile agnosia, where they can feel an object, but they can't identify it by touch alone. They might hold a key, feel its shape and weight, but they would be unable to tell you what it is without looking at it. This suggests that the feeling of touch and the interpretation of that feeling are separate processes in the brain, and that if one is disrupted, the whole system can fall apart. It's a humbling reminder that what we perceive as a single unified experience is actually a complex negotiation between multiple brain regions. The body map itself, the one that can be fooled by the rubber hand illusion, is not a fixed, unchanging blueprint. It's constantly being updated. When you learn to play a musical instrument or type on a keyboard, your brain's map of your fingers expands and becomes more detailed. This is a process known as neuroplasticity. Your brain is literally changing its physical structure based on your experiences. It's a live, dynamic, and incredibly adaptable map. This is why a professional violinist can feel the slightest vibration in their bow, a perception that most people wouldn't even notice. Their brain has rewired itself to pay closer attention to those subtle, tactile inputs. The phantom limb phenomenon, which we briefly touched upon, is a profound example of this. When a limb is lost, the brain's map of that limb doesn't just disappear. The area of the brain that used to receive signals from the missing limb may be taken over by signals from adjacent body parts like the face or the torso. But the brain still expects those signals from the missing limb, and the mismatch can result in intense pain. It's a conflict between the brain's predictive model and the reality of the body. The mind's map is so powerful that it creates a sensation that is completely real to the person experiencing it, even though the physical source is gone. Modern therapies like mirror therapy work by tricking the brain into updating its map, showing that by changing the visual and tactile input, you can actually relieve the pain. What we call pain itself is a complex construction. It is not a simple one-to-one signal from a sensor. It's a blend of the physical sensation, your emotional state, and your beliefs about the pain. This is why two people can experience the exact same injury, but one might report it as excruciating, while the other barely notices it. Your brain, in its role as a master editor, is constantly deciding whether to amplify or dampen the pain signal based on context and emotion. The placebo effect, where a person feels better because they believe they have received a real treatment, is a testament to the power of the brain's ability to manipulate physical sensation. The brain's prediction that the pain should go away is so strong that it overrides the actual physical sensations. The whole system of touch, from the intricate network of nerve endings to the brain's interpretive models, is a testament to the brain's creative power. It's not about truth. It's about a functional, meaningful reality. You are not just a collection of sensations. You are a being who experiences those sensations with emotional weight and personal history. The feeling of a gentle breeze on your face isn't just air pressure. It's a sense of freedom or a moment of peace. The sensation of warm sunlight on your skin isn't just a change in temperature. It's a feeling of comfort and well-being. Your brain takes these simple signals and weaves them into a story that gives your life depth and meaning. And that's a story worth appreciating, especially as you drift closer to sleep. Let the quiet magic of your skin, of your bones and muscles tell its own story. A story of a body that knows where it is in space, that can feel both the world and the emotions of others, and that can gently lead you into a deeper, more peaceful state of being. Your sense of touch has quietly faded, and now we move into the more intimate of your senses, taste and smell. These are often treated as the sidekicks of the sensory world, overshadowed by vision and hearing. But in many ways, they are the most powerful illusionists of all. Sight and sound reach you from a distance, but taste and smell require a substance to enter your body. They are direct, immediate, and closely tied to survival. And in a profound sense, they are the true time travelers of your mind. Let's begin with taste. As you probably know, taste happens mainly on the tongue. Their taste buds detect 5 primary flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, the savory flavor found in things like mushrooms, soy sauce, and Parmesan cheese. Each of these flavors serves a purpose. Sweetness signals energy-rich sugars. Saltiness helps maintain electrolyte balance. Sourness can warn of spoilage. Bitterness often signals toxins. And umami points to protein. Your body uses taste as a kind of chemical scanner, encouraging you to eat what's good and avoid what's dangerous. A classic historical debate from the early 1900s was whether the tongue had specific zones for each taste. We now know that all 5 tastes can be detected across the entire surface of the tongue, though some areas may be slightly more sensitive to certain flavors. It's an old theory that held on for decades, but the modern scientific view is that taste is far more integrated. But here's where the illusion begins. Taste alone is surprisingly limited. Most of what you think of as flavor actually comes from smell. When you eat, volatile molecules travel up through the back of your throat to your nose, where olfactory receptors process them. This is called retronasal olfaction, and it's the reason food tastes bland when you have a cold. Your taste buds might be working fine, but without smell, the richness of flavor disappears. Without the subtle cues from your nose, An apple and a raw onion might have similar textures, but you'd struggle to tell them apart. It's a common party trick that your brain can be so easily fooled by the absence of just one sense. The illusion of flavor is a seamless collaboration between your tongue and your nose, a quiet conversation that happens thousands of times a day. The olfactory system is unusual in a few ways. For one, it bypasses the thalamus, the usual relay station for sensory information, and connects directly to areas of the brain involved in emotion and memory, like the amygdala and the hippocampus. That's why smell is so strongly tied to recollection. A whiff of sunscreen can send you straight back to a childhood beach trip in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The smell of old books might transport you to a quiet library or a rainy afternoon. These memory-laced reactions happen almost instantly and often without conscious effort. It's a direct, unfiltered line to your deepest memories and emotions. This is a topic of intense study today, with neuroscientists still debating how exactly these direct connections work. One of the prevailing theories is that the direct connection to the emotional centers makes olfaction a privileged sense, giving it a unique power to trigger memories with a level of detail and emotional intensity that other senses can't always match. Smell is also incredibly sensitive. Humans can distinguish between over 1 trillion different odors, though we're not always great at naming them. You might recognize the scent of your grandmother's perfume immediately, even if you couldn't describe it in words. Our brains evolved to treat certain smells as significant, especially those related to danger food and familiar people. The sense of smell has even been shown to play a role in social behavior and attraction. Though we rarely think about it, humans emit a range of subtle chemical signals, and our brains are wired to pick up on them. Research has suggested that people may be able to detect immune system compatibility through scent alone influencing mate selection. While it's not exactly a conscious decision, it does show how deeply embedded smell is in our biology. You might not consciously think, this person has a compatible immune system, but your brain gets the memo and influences your gut feelings. Now let's take a moment to appreciate one of the more overlooked senses, interoception. This is your brain's ability to sense the internal state of your body. Hunger, thirst, heartbeat, breathing, bladder fullness. These are all tracked by interoceptive signals. They don't originate in the outside world, but within you. They keep the internal machinery of your body in check and help guide behavior accordingly. You drink when you're thirsty, eat when you're hungry, lie down when you're exhausted. But interoception also contributes to your emotional life. That fluttering in your stomach when you're nervous, the tight chest, when you're anxious, the warm buzz of contentment after a good meal. All of these are bodily states interpreted by your brain as emotions. Some scientists believe that emotions are at their core. Your brain's attempt to explain changes in internal sensation. Are you angry or just hungry? Is it love or too much caffeine? Sometimes it's hard to tell. There's a little joke among neurobiologists that your brain is just a storyteller for your guts. It's not a direct line to the truth, but a narrative it creates to make sense of what's happening inside your body. Some people are more attuned to their interoceptive signals than others. There's a curious little test you can do yourself to get a sense of this. Just sit quietly, close your eyes, and try to count your heartbeats without taking your pulse. You're trying to feel the rhythm of your own heart. People with high interoceptive sensitivity are often better at this task. They're highly attuned to their internal signals, able to detect subtle shifts in heartbeat or gut sensations. Others are less aware and may struggle to notice when they're stressed or tense until it becomes overwhelming. Interoception is not just about bodily regulation. It's deeply tied to self-awareness and mental health. A great deal of a person's physical anxiety can be tied back to their brain's misinterpretation of normal physiological signals. Altogether, touch, taste, smell, and interoception form a kind of intimate quartet of perception. Unlike sight and sound, which reach out into the world, these senses turn inward or bring the world into you. They are rooted in physicality grounded in the textures, temperatures, and chemicals that make up your immediate reality. They're also the most personal, entwined with emotion, memory, and meaning in a way that no other senses quite match. And yet, just like the rest, these senses are not direct lines to the truth. They are interpreted, modulated, and sometimes even invented. The brain fills in flavors, adjusts temperatures, adds emotional coloration to physical sensations, and draws from past experience to make sense of what's happening in the present. A powerful demonstration of this is the placebo effect in medicine. When a patient is given a sugar pill, but told it's a powerful painkiller, their brain's expectation of pain relief is so strong that it can trigger a real measurable reduction in pain. The brain is literally creating a reality where the pain is gone, even though the body hasn't received any pain-killing chemicals. It's the ultimate example of the mind's ability to override or create physical sensations based on a story it has been told. It's an elegant piece of neurological trickery that shows just how powerful expectation can be. The placebo effect and its opposite, the nocebo effect, are areas of intense academic debate with researchers from Johns Hopkins to Stanford, still trying to understand the full extent of how a person's beliefs can directly influence their physiological experience. The brain's ability to manipulate physical sensation also helps explain why a hot sauce, which is essentially a chemical irritant, can be a source of pleasure. The sensation of pain is a warning signal, but the brain's interpretation of that signal can be changed by context. In the right setting, a spicy meal with friends in a vibrant city like New Orleans, the brain relabels that pain as an exciting flavor, rewarding you with a rush of endorphins. It's a wonderful example of the brain's ability to turn a bug into a feature, taking an unpleasant signal and recategorizing it as a source of enjoyment. And this flexibility, this neuroplasticity, is what makes all sensory perception so fascinating. Your experience of the world isn't fixed. It adapts, adjusts, and evolves based on context, learning, and need. The brain is always fine-tuning, always editing, always updating the model. In the end, whether you're sipping tea, walking barefoot through grass, or curling up under a warm blanket, you're not just touching the world. The world is touching you, and your brain is telling you a story about it, one woven with nerve endings, shaped by past experience and gently tinted by your emotions. It's a quiet kind of magic, and it's happening every moment you're alive. So, as you lay in your bed and let the world drift away, take a moment to be grateful for this brilliant, creative, and sometimes mischievous system. Be grateful for the senses that allow you to feel, to taste, to smell, and to know what's happening inside your own body. These senses, more than any others, remind you that you are a physical being connected to the world in a way that is both messy and beautiful. They remind you that you are real even if your experience of them is a perfectly crafted illusion. Your senses of taste and smell have faded now, and with them, the immediate physical world. Now, we enter the strange and twisting landscape of memory. Contrary to popular belief, your memory is not like a dusty library full of perfectly cataloged books. It's more like a busy kitchen, messy, improvisational, and always trying to whip up something palatable using whatever ingredients are on hand. Your brain isn't pulling neatly filed records from a mental filing cabinet. It's reconstructing, remixing, and seasoning your experiences every time you try to remember them. Which is why, oddly enough, the act of remembering something can actually change the memory itself. This might sound a little unsettling, especially if you pride yourself on having a sharp memory. But it's not a design flaw. It's a feature. Your brain doesn't prioritize perfect accuracy. It prioritizes utility. If perfect recall were really the goal, we'd all be walking around haunted by every minor embarrassment and forgotten phone numbers since childhood. Instead, memory serves your ability to navigate life. It helps you learn from the past, make predictions, and tell stories about who you are. The process of memory begins with encoding. When your brain takes in sensory information, it starts turning it into something usable. Maybe you're listening to a song, eating a slice of pizza from a small shop in Chicago, or meeting someone new. Your brain registers what's happening, but it doesn't treat every detail equally. Attention plays a huge role here. What you focus on gets encoded more deeply. What you ignore is often lost forever. From there, the brain goes into storage mode. But again, this isn't about shelving things in a neat little corner. Memories are stored across different regions of the brain depending on their content. Visual elements might live in the visual cortex, emotional tones in the amygdala, and factual bits in the hippocampus. Your brain is less like a warehouse and more like a massive interconnected web. A memory of your first day of school might be distributed across dozens of neural pathways. Smells, sounds, tastes, emotions all linked together. Then comes retrieval. When you recall a memory, your brain doesn't simply pull out a static copy. Instead, it reactivates the network of neurons associated with that memory, essentially recreating it. And here's the twist. Every time you recall a memory, you slightly modify it. Maybe you forget a detail or add one that wasn't there before. Maybe you emphasize one part and downplay another. The next time you remember it, you're not remembering the original event. You're remembering the last time you remembered it. This is known as memory reconsolidation. And it's why memories aren't just fallible, they're downright slippery. You might confidently recall the layout of your childhood bedroom, or the way a certain person laughed, only to later discover that your memory doesn't match reality at all. This is a fact that has massive implications for us all, and one that is still debated heavily in legal circles. Studies have shown how easy it is to implant false memories, especially when suggestions come from trusted sources. In one famous experiment, researchers were able to convince people that they had been lost in a shopping mall as a child, a completely fabricated event. The participants didn't just agree it had happened. They began to describe it in detail. Even without deliberate suggestion, your brain can mislead you. Think about eyewitness testimony. It's often treated as gold in the courtroom, but research shows that it's highly unreliable. Two people can witness the same event and walk away with entirely different stories, shaped by their expectations, emotions, and even the wording of the questions they're later asked. A simple change from "Did you see the broken headlight?" to "Did you see a broken headlight?" can influence what someone thinks they saw. It's not that people are lying. It's that the brain fills in blanks and smooths over rough edges without asking permission. It creates a coherent narrative, even if that narrative isn't exactly true. Then there's the role of emotion. Strong emotions, especially fear and joy, can deepen memory encoding. That's why you might vividly recall where you were during a major life event, like hearing surprising news or experiencing something wonderful. These are called flashbulb memories, and while they feel especially accurate, they are still prone to distortion. Over time, the core emotion may remain, but the details shift. Interestingly, emotional memories often become more about the feeling than the facts. You might remember that a conversation was hurtful, but not exactly what was said, or that a vacation in Miami was blissful, even if it rained half the time. Your brain saves what matters to your story, not necessarily what happened moment to moment. Memories are also shaped by what you already believe. If you think of yourself as someone who's always been shy, you may unintentionally recall past events in a way that supports that belief. You remember freezing up in a high school play, but not the time you led a group project in a debate. This is called confirmation bias, and it doesn't just affect what you believe about politics or science. It subtly guides how you remember your own life. This narrative editing doesn't happen out of malice. It's part of how we make sense of ourselves. Memory is deeply tied to identity. You are in a very real way the story you tell yourself about your past. That story gives you a sense of continuity, a thread connecting your younger self to who you are now. And because the brain craves consistency, it prefers to preserve the story over the raw data. There's a term for this internal narrator, the autobiographical self. It's the voice that tells you who you are, where you've been, and what it all means. But that voice isn't a passive recorder. It's a highly involved editor, constantly updating the script, and sometimes it rewrites entire chapters. Consider childhood memories. Many adults have vivid memories of being in a stroller or seeing the family dog as a toddler. But research suggests that most of these memories aren't from actual experience. They're reconstructions based on photos, family stories, or repeated retellings. The technical term for this phenomenon is source amnesia. You remember the content, but forget where it came from. Eventually, the line between lived memory and secondhand story blurs, and your brain adopts the tale as its own. It's a bit like believing you wrote a song after hearing it played 1,000 times. And then there's déjà vu, that eerie feeling that you've experienced something before, even when you haven't. Scientists believe it might stem from a brief hiccup in memory processing, where the brain mistakenly flags a new experience as familiar. It's like your memory system jumps the gun tagging something as a repeat when it's actually brand new. It's not dangerous, just a little reminder that your internal reality checker isn't infallible. On the flip side, there's jamais vu, the feeling that something familiar suddenly seems strange. You're looking at a word you've written 100 times and suddenly it looks alien, or you find yourself in a familiar place, but it feels oddly unfamiliar. It's the brain's version of a double take, a momentary disruption in the smooth machinery of recognition. Despite all its quirks and imperfections, memory is remarkably resilient. It allows you to navigate daily life, build relationships, and learn from experience. You remember how to tie your shoes, the lyrics to your favorite song, the taste of your favorite meal. These aren't just facts. They're the texture of your life, and they live in different forms. Procedural memory stores skills and habits. Semantic memory holds general knowledge. Episodic memory captures personal experiences. Together, they create a rich, multidimensional model of the world and your place in it. What's fascinating is that memory is also future-oriented. When you imagine what you'll do next week or next year, you're using the same brain regions involved in recalling the past. The hippocampus in particular is active not only when retrieving memories, but also when constructing mental simulations of possible futures. This is known as the constructive episodic simulation hypothesis. It suggests that memory evolved not to help you reminisce, but to help you plan. When you think about it, that makes sense. The ability to imagine outcomes, learn from past mistakes, and mentally rehearse actions is essential for survival. Your brain is constantly running simulations, weighing options, and choosing paths. It uses memories as raw material to generate possible futures. That vacation you're dreaming of in Hawaii, that conversation you're dreading, that goal you're working toward, they all exist in your mind as recombined fragments of past experience. And while this flexibility makes memory powerful, it also makes it fragile. People with damage to the hippocampus often struggle not only to remember the past, but to imagine the future. Without memory, you lose more than recollection. You lose the ability to project yourself forward. Still, there's beauty in the imperfection. The fact that memory is reconstructive means it's also creative. You're not just a historian of your past. You are its author. You reshape your memories every time you tell a story, every time you reflect, every time you find new meaning in something old. Your memory may not be a flawless archive, but it's a living, breathing narrative stitched together with emotion, filtered through belief, and polished by the passage of time. It's not a record of what happened. It's a reflection of what matters. And in the end, maybe that's what makes it so human. It's a debate that philosophers and historians have had for centuries. And now neuroscientists at places like MIT and the University of California, Berkeley, are finally starting to have the tools to provide data to this long-standing argument. They still argue, though, and they probably always will. Your memories have gently settled, and with them, the past. Now we arrive at one of the deepest mysteries of all the self. If you've ever caught yourself wondering, who am I really? Congratulations! You've stumbled upon one of the oldest, trickiest, and most persistent questions the human brain has ever cooked up. The idea of the self feels solid. You wake up each morning with a sense that you're the same person you were yesterday, albeit maybe with messier hair and a slightly stronger need for coffee. But if you dig just a little deeper into how your brain actually works, that sense of a unified self starts to feel a bit like a magician's illusion. Elegant, convincing, and possibly held together with duct tape and stage lighting. At the center of this illusion is the fact that the brain doesn't operate like a single coherent unit. It's more like a team of specialists, each with its own job, working together in a noisy and sometimes uncoordinated way. You have regions for processing vision, others for language, some for emotion, others for decision-making, and they're all constantly exchanging information, negotiating, and sometimes arguing. There isn't one central spot where it all comes together and gets stamped with an I am me label. The sense of self emerges from this messy, brilliant collaboration. This idea becomes especially clear when we look at people who've experienced brain injuries. There are rare but fascinating cases where damage to specific brain areas alters a person's sense of identity in startling ways. Some individuals no longer recognize loved ones, while others develop entirely new personalities. The brain can rewrite who you are, or at least how you appear to others, based on which systems are disrupted. In some ways, that's deeply humbling. It suggests that your you-ness isn't etched in stone. It's a delicate balance held together by biology. One of the most dramatic illustrations of this idea comes from patients who have undergone a procedure called corpus callosotomy, more commonly known as split brain surgery. In these individuals, the connection between the brain's two hemispheres, the corpus callosum, is severed usually to treat severe epilepsy. The result is that the two halves of the brain can no longer communicate directly. You might expect that this would lead to obvious dysfunction. But what's remarkable is how subtle the effects can be until you test the two hemispheres separately. Here's where things get weird. The left side of your brain, for most people, is the seat of language. It's the part that talks, rationalizes, and explains. The right side, on the other hand, is more spatial, emotional, and visual. In split brain experiments, researchers found that if you show an image to the right hemisphere by flashing it to the left visual field, the person can't describe it because the language centers in the left hemisphere never saw it. But if you ask the person to point to the image using their left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, they can do it with ease. What this suggests is that the two hemispheres are each processing information independently. And when the left hemisphere, the so-called interpreter, doesn't know what the right side is doing, it just makes up a story. In one famous case, a split brain patient was shown a snowy landscape with their right hemisphere and a chicken claw with their left. They were then asked to point to related images. With the left hand, they picked a snow shovel. With the right hand, a chicken. When asked why they chose the shovel, the left hemisphere, which hadn't seen the snowy scene, said, "Oh, that's easy. You need a shovel to clean out the chicken coop." The brain wasn't lying. It was just doing what it always does, creating a coherent story from incomplete information. These kinds of experiments, conducted by neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga, reveal something important. Your brain is constantly telling itself stories about who you are and why you do what you do. And those stories don't have to be true. They just have to feel plausible. Your inner narrator wants coherence even when coherence doesn't exist. The concept of the interpreter comes from a famous historical debate among neurologists about the nature of consciousness. They still argue about whether consciousness is a single unified thing or a collection of smaller processes, and these split brain patients provide a unique window into this problem. This leads us to a provocative idea that consciousness is not the cause of your actions, but the result. That your brain initiates behavior, and only afterward does your conscious self explain it. Some experiments seem to support this, such as studies using EEG machines to detect the brain's activity before a person becomes aware of a decision. Participants are asked to press a button whenever they feel like it, and researchers find that the brain shows signs of preparing for the action several hundred milliseconds before the person reports the conscious decision to press. In essence, your brain decides and then your conscious mind claims credit. That might sound disturbing, like you're just a puppet being operated by unseen forces, but it's not quite that dire. It's more that the conscious self is like a rider on an elephant. You might think you're steering, but much of the movement comes from below, driven by instinct, habit, and unconscious processing. The rider can influence, redirect, and reflect, but the elephant often moves on its own. Your sense of continuity. The feeling that you are the same person across time is also something your brain works hard to maintain. Yet identity is more fluid than we like to admit. Think about how different you were 10 years ago. Different tastes, beliefs, maybe even a different hairstyle that seemed like a good idea at the time. The you of the past can feel like a completely separate person. And in many ways they were. Your brain has rewired itself. New memories have formed. Habits have changed. But your internal narrator bridges the gap with the illusion of a stable self. Some philosophers and scientists argue that there is no single unified self at all, just a collection of mental processes bundled together by memory and attention. This idea, sometimes called the bundle theory of the self, goes all the way back to the 18th century philosopher, David Hume. He couldn't find any solid core to his own mind, just a stream of sensations, thoughts, and emotions flowing by. Modern neuroscience largely agrees. What we call I is a mosaic of perception, memory, intention, emotion, and bodily awareness, all woven into a story that feels cohesive but is constantly changing. The brain even maintains separate maps of the body and the world around it. Your sense of where your hand is comes from one set of neural processes. Your sense of what that hand can do comes from another, and your awareness of that hand as your hand, that's yet another layer. These layers usually integrate seamlessly, but in rare cases they can fall apart. Some people with certain neurological conditions develop a sense that a limb is not theirs, even though it's attached to their body. This is called somatoparaphrenia, and it's another glimpse into how constructed and fragile our sense of ownership can be. Even something as simple as recognizing yourself in a mirror involves complex processing. Infants typically don't recognize themselves until they're around 18 months old. Before that, they might try to touch or interact with the other baby in the mirror. Self-recognition requires not only visual awareness, but also the ability to map that image onto your internal sense of identity. That ability is surprisingly rare in the animal kingdom. Only a few species like chimpanzees, elephants, dolphins, and some birds have passed the mirror test. So where does all this leave us? If the self is an illusion, is it a bad thing? Not necessarily. Illusions can be beautiful. A rainbow is an illusion after all, a trick of light and water droplets. But it's still real in the sense that it exists as an experience. The self, too, is real as an experience. It's the lens through which we see the world. Even if the lens itself is more art than artifact, you're a process, not a product, a verb, not a noun. Your brain is constantly rewriting, updating, and negotiating who you are in response to new experiences, emotions, and insights. That fluidity isn't a flaw. It's what allows you to grow, adapt, and reinvent yourself over time. The fact that you feel like the same person day after day is not because nothing changes, but because your brain is exceptionally good at stitching the story together. In the end, the self might not be a single thing you can point to, but rather a delicate balance of many systems working in harmony. It's not a fixed identity, but a constantly evolving performance, one that your brain choreographs moment by moment. You're not the same person you were yesterday. And that's not a failure of memory or personality. That's the miracle of being alive. It's a truth that modern cognitive scientists are still wrestling with, trying to create computer models that can replicate the human sense of self. A task that seems to get more complicated the more they understand how the brain actually works. The jury is still out on what self really means. And that's okay. It's a beautifully human question to ask, and the search for the answer is a journey in itself. The idea of the self has gently dissolved, and with it, the strict boundaries of who you are. Now we enter the strange, elastic landscape of time. Time is one of those things that seems simple until you start thinking about it. A clock ticks. The sun rises and sets. You get older, things change. Easy enough, right? But the moment you really pause and start poking at it, time reveals itself as a profoundly weird, bendable, and deeply personal phenomenon. It's something we all experience, but not in the same way, not even close. Physicists will tell you that time is a dimension much like space. In Einstein's theory of relativity, time and space are woven together into a single fabric called space-time. And according to that theory, time doesn't tick along at the same rate for everyone. If you're moving very fast, or you're near a massive object like a planet or black hole, time slows down for you. Relative to someone else, this isn't science fiction. It's been measured. Astronauts on the International Space Station age a tiny bit more slowly than people on Earth, thanks to time dilation. The difference is minuscule, but it's real. That's time on a cosmic scale. But the strangeness doesn't end with physics. Inside your head, time gets even messier because your brain doesn't have a dedicated clock the way it has ears or eyes. There's no single timekeeping center that ticks off seconds like a metronome. Instead, your experience of time is a construction, a feeling pieced together from memory, attention, emotion, and sensory input. In fact, your brain is constantly estimating the passage of time using a combination of cues. How much information it's processing, how much has happened, how predictable or unpredictable things feel. And because these factors are fluid, your perception of time is wildly flexible. Minutes can stretch or vanish depending on the context. Everyone has had the experience of time dragging. Waiting in line at the DMV, stuck in traffic in Atlanta, or sitting through a dull lecture can make a few minutes feel eternal. This happens because your brain has little new or interesting information to process. Without novelty to anchor time, your internal clock seems to slow down. You become more aware of the passage of time itself, and that attention makes the seconds feel heavier. On the other hand, when you're deeply engaged, laughing with friends at a coffee shop in Seattle, watching a great movie, or getting lost in a creative project, hours can pass without you noticing. Psychologists call this state flow, and it's one of the most enjoyable ways to experience time. In flow, your sense of self recedes, distractions fade, and you stop tracking time altogether. Ironically, it's only afterward that you realize how much time has passed. During the experience, time becomes irrelevant. Your age also plays a big role in how you perceive time. For children, days can feel long and summers stretch forever. But as you get older, the years seem to fly by. One popular explanation for this is the proportional theory of time perception. When you're 5 years old, 1 year is a fifth of your life, a huge chunk. When you're 50, 1 year is just a 50th. Each passing year becomes a smaller fraction of your total experience, and subjectively, that makes it feel shorter. But it's not just about proportion. It's also about novelty. New experiences create rich memories, and those memories make time feel full and expansive in retrospect. Think of a year when you moved to a new place, started a new job, or traveled a lot. Chances are that year feels longer in hindsight than a year filled with routine. Your brain encodes novel experiences more vividly, which gives the illusion that more time has passed. This is why vacations, while brief, often feel substantial in your memory. This dynamic also explains why time can feel like it speeds up when life gets predictable. When each day blends into the next with no standout events, the brain doesn't lay down strong memory traces. Later, when you look back, it's as if the time barely happened at all. That's one reason people often say that time speeds up as they age, not because the days are shorter, But because fewer novel experiences are being stored with vivid detail, emotion plays a powerful role too. High-stress moments can make time feel both fast and slow, depending on how you're paying attention. In a sudden emergency like a car accident on a highway in Boston, people often report that everything seemed to move in slow motion. One explanation for this is that the brain under threat ramps up attention and encoding. You remember more detail, and that extra detail makes the moment seem longer in hindsight. Interestingly, actual time perception during the event doesn't change much. It's the memory of it that stretches. Conversely, fear and anxiety can compress your perception of time while you're waiting. If you're nervous about a test result or a difficult conversation, a short wait can feel like an eternity. Your brain, primed for something unpleasant, keeps checking in, asking, "Is it here yet?" The repeated mental checking makes the experience feel longer, even if the clock hasn't budged much. Sleep also has a strange relationship with time. When you fall asleep, hours vanish in what feels like an instant. You lie down, close your eyes, and suddenly it's morning. But dreams, those wild, vivid simulations, often feel like they stretch across hours, even if they only last a few minutes in real time. Some researchers believe this is because the brain in REM sleep processes information differently, creating the illusion of extended duration. The normal markers of time, external stimuli, conscious thought, physical movement, are largely absent, so your dream brain fills in the gaps. There's also a curious phenomenon called chronostasis. You may have experienced this when glancing at a clock and noticing that the second hand seems to freeze for a beat. What's happening is that your brain fills in the visual gap from the eye movement with a mental placeholder, making the first moment of your gaze appear to last longer than it actually does. It's a little illusion created by the brain's need to maintain a seamless narrative of time, even when the data is momentarily missing. In fact, your brain is constantly smoothing out your perception of time, stitching together sensory inputs and internal processes into something that feels continuous and flowing. But it's not actually real time in the way you might assume. There's always a small lag, usually a few hundred milliseconds, between when something happens and when you consciously experience it. Your brain is running a little behind, buffering reality like a cautious video stream. But instead of showing you that delay, it edits things so they feel instant. This delay becomes particularly interesting when different senses are involved. Sound and sight, for example, travel at different speeds and are processed in different parts of the brain. Yet when someone claps their hands, you perceive the sight and sound as occurring simultaneously. Your brain synchronizes them, compensating for delays so that reality feels cohesive. It's a delicate balancing act, and most of the time it works flawlessly. Unless, of course, it doesn't. If you've ever watched a video where the sound is out of sync with the picture even by a tiny margin, it can be maddening. Your brain relies on that temporal alignment to make sense of what's happening. When it's off, the illusion of real time falls apart, and you become suddenly aware of the machinery behind perception. Disorders of time perception can be especially revealing. In certain neurological or psychiatric conditions, time can seem to speed up, slow down, or even stop. Some people with depression report that time feels like it's dragging endlessly, while those with mania may feel that time is racing ahead. People with schizophrenia may experience disordered timing in speech or action, making the world feel unpredictable or fragmented. These disruptions highlight just how much your sense of time depends on brain chemistry and neural rhythm. Some substances can also shift time perception dramatically. Psychedelic drugs like LSD or psilocybin often distort the sense of time, making minutes feel like hours or vice versa. These effects likely stem from changes in how information is processed and integrated across the brain. Under the influence of such substances, the usual filters and rhythms are altered, revealing how fragile the illusion of steady time really is. Even meditation can stretch or compress time. Experienced meditators sometimes report that time feels slower, more expansive, or even irrelevant during deep practice. This may be due to changes in attention and awareness. When you're focused on the present moment, not anticipating or remembering the experience of time can dissolve. You're not measuring it anymore. You're simply being in it. And that may be the most curious aspect of all our constant urge to measure, manage, and track time. Despite it being something we don't fully understand, we slice it into hours and minutes. We plan it, sell it, and wish for more of it. Yet the experience of time is always personal, always subjective, always filtered through the lens of the very human brain. What we call time isn't just something outside us ticking away like a metronome. It's something our brains are actively constructing, interpreting, smoothing, stretching, and squeezing. It changes depending on where we are, how we feel, what we're doing, and what we remember. Time isn't just on the clock, it's in the mind. And the mind, as we've seen, is a highly creative editor. A little-known fact from a history book is that the ancient Greeks, with philosophers like Zeno of Elea, created a series of paradoxes that questioned the very nature of motion and time. They argued that a moving object could never reach its destination because it would have to cross an infinite number of points, an idea that perplexed thinkers for centuries. It's a paradox that modern physics has since resolved, but it speaks to the enduring human fascination with the slipperiness of time. It's an issue that thinkers from antiquity to the modern day have all found themselves struggling with. So even if the seconds on your watch march forward with perfect precision, your internal time is a different beast altogether. It dances, skips meanders, and occasionally takes a nap. And that's part of what makes being human so interesting. We don't just measure time, we feel it. And in feeling it, we shape the story of our lives. As you prepare to fall asleep, perhaps you can let go of the clock and simply let your mind drift with its own internal rhythm. Let it slow down, expand, and maybe even let the seconds stretch into a comfortable, quiet eternity. The flow of time has become a gentle personal current, and you are drifting on it. As you do, you are beginning to cross a new threshold. The world, with all its sights and sounds, is slowly receding. The conscious mind is letting go, and your brain is about to perform its greatest act of creative illusion, the dream. Dreams are like private screenings of strange films, where you're the director, the actor, and usually the confused audience too. You might find yourself flying over a purple ocean, talking to a giraffe in a business suit, or being late for an exam you never studied for in a subject you haven't taken since high school. And somehow, none of this seems odd until you wake up. That's the wild magic of dreaming. The brain creates entire worlds while you sleep, and you go along for the ride without question. Sleep in general is an extraordinary process. It is not a passive shutdown as people once believed. Instead, your brain becomes incredibly active during certain phases of sleep, especially during rapid eye movement sleep, commonly known as REM sleep. This is the stage most closely associated with vivid dreaming. During REM, your eyes dart back and forth under your eyelids. Your breathing becomes irregular. Your muscles temporarily become paralyzed, and your brain activity ramps up to levels remarkably similar to wakefulness. In fact, if you were to look at a brain scan of someone in REM sleep, you might assume they were awake until you notice they're completely still and unresponsive. But here's where things get especially fascinating. The parts of your brain responsible for logic and self-awareness go quiet during REM sleep, while the regions involved in emotion memory and visual imagery light up like a fireworks display. The result, a mental space where realism takes a back seat, but emotional intensity takes the wheel. It's like your brain is in creative mode, generating surreal scenarios with complete confidence and zero concern for continuity. One of the leading theories about why we dream is called the activation synthesis hypothesis. It suggests that during REM sleep, the brainstem sends out bursts of random neural signals. The higher brain regions, particularly the cortex, then try to make sense of these signals by weaving them into a story. It's a bit like receiving random words from a typewriter and trying to turn them into a poem. The story doesn't have to make logical sense. It just has to feel coherent in the moment. That's why dreams often jump from one scene to another without warning. Your brain isn't confused. It's improvising. Another theory, known as the threat simulation theory, proposes that dreams evolved as a kind of virtual reality training ground. According to this idea, dreams allow you to rehearse responses to dangerous or socially complex situations in a low-risk environment. That could explain why many people have recurring dreams about being chased falling or being unprepared. It's not just anxiety bubbling up. It might be your brain practicing how to survive. Whatever their evolutionary purpose, dreams certainly have a strong link to memory. During sleep, especially in the later stages of the night, the brain works to consolidate memories, strengthening important ones, discarding the irrelevant, and integrating new knowledge into your existing mental framework. Dreams might be a byproduct of this process, or perhaps even a part of it. You often dream about people, places, or concerns from your waking life, though usually rearranged in strange ways. It's like your brain is reorganizing its filing cabinet and throwing a themed party at the same time. Lucid dreaming is where things get particularly curious. This occurs when you become aware that you're dreaming while still inside the dream. Some people can even learn to control their dreams, flying at will, changing the scenery, or conjuring dream characters to interact with. Studies using brain imaging have shown that during lucid dreams, there's increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain associated with reasoning and self-awareness. In other words, it's as if the waking mind briefly reboots inside the dream state. People who practice lucid dreaming often use techniques like reality checks, asking themselves throughout the day whether they're dreaming. Over time, the habit can carry over into sleep. For example, one method is to look at your hands or a clock and see if they behave normally. In a dream, hands might have extra fingers, and clocks tend to misbehave, numbers swimming or changing every time you glance away. Once you spot something strange, you can trigger lucidity. Interestingly, lucid dreams tend to occur more frequently in people who are highly introspective or prone to vivid imagination. They're also more common in people who wake up briefly during the night and then fall back asleep, often slipping straight into REM sleep. While not everyone experiences lucid dreams naturally, they're not particularly rare. Around half of all people report having had at least one lucid dream in their lifetime. Then there are sleep disorders that show just how thin the line is between dreaming and waking. Take sleep paralysis, for instance. This is when you wake up mentally, but remain physically paralyzed, a normal part of REM sleep that usually goes unnoticed. However, when it happens consciously, it can be terrifying. People often report feeling unable to move, sensing a presence in the room, or seeing shadowy figures. These hallucinations are called hypnopompic if they occur upon waking, and hypnagogic if they happen as you're falling asleep. Sleep paralysis has been the inspiration for countless folklore tales around the world. In some cultures, it's attributed to malevolent spirits or supernatural forces. The famous old hag sitting on the chest is a common motif, and the experience can be profoundly disturbing. But from a scientific perspective, it's simply a glitch in the transition between sleep states. Your brain's dream imagery leaks into wakefulness while your body's natural muscle inhibition lingers for a moment too long. A little-known historical fact is that in 18th century New Orleans, there were widespread reports of something called the demon of the bayou that would sit on people's chests at night, an obvious early interpretation of what we now understand as sleep paralysis. Another interesting quirk of dreaming is how little you remember. Most people forget their dreams within minutes of waking. This isn't a sign of a defective memory. It's a result of the brain's chemistry during REM sleep. The neurotransmitters that help encode memories are suppressed during dreaming. Unless you wake up during or immediately after a dream, you're unlikely to store it long term. Even then, the details often evaporate like mist. There are, of course, exceptions. Some people naturally remember dreams more often, and certain techniques like keeping a dream journal can help. Writing down your dreams as soon as you wake up reinforces the memory and increases dream recall over time. Within a few weeks of consistent journaling, many people notice that their dreams become more vivid, elaborate, and easier to remember. Dream content can vary widely from person to person. But there are some surprisingly universal themes. Flying, falling, being chased, showing up late losing teeth, or finding yourself unprepared. These dreams appear across cultures and ages. They're often symbolic, tied to stress, uncertainty, or desire. But they don't always mean something deep or mysterious. Sometimes a dream about missing the bus in Washington, D.C. just means you've been anxious about time. Sometimes a dream about talking to a walrus in a tuxedo is exactly as weird as it sounds. The Freudian idea that dreams are a secret language of the subconscious has largely fallen out of scientific favor. But the idea that dreams reflect our inner life still holds weight. Even if they don't deliver coded messages from the unconscious, dreams are undeniably shaped by our thoughts, experiences, and emotions. From a neuroscience perspective, dreams offer a glimpse into how the brain operates without the constraints of external reality. In waking life, your brain constantly checks its predictions against sensory input. In dreams, that feedback loop is cut off. There's no real visual data, no touch or smell, no sense of balance or position. The brain, left to its own devices, fills in the blanks with whatever it has: memories, impressions, stories, fears, and hopes. It creates a virtual reality unconstrained by physics or logic, and then places you right in the center of it. This capacity for internal simulation might be one of the brain's most impressive features. Even while you're asleep, your mind remains hard at work running scenarios, solving problems, or simply playing. There have been cases where people reported solving creative puzzles or waking up with new insights into problems after dreaming about them. Artists, inventors, and scientists have often credited dreams for inspiration. The melody for the Beatles' song "Yesterday" came to Paul McCartney in a dream. The structure of the benzene molecule reportedly came to chemist Auguste Kekulé as a dream of a snake biting its own tail. Whether or not these stories are fully accurate, they highlight the brain's potential to connect ideas in novel ways when freed from the constraints of waking thought. The academic debate over whether dreams are truly problem-solving tools or just a side effect of memory consolidation is a lively one, with researchers at UCLA and Harvard publishing new findings all the time. Of course, not all dreams are helpful or welcome. Nightmares can be distressing and disruptive, especially for people dealing with trauma. In some cases, recurring nightmares can interfere with sleep and emotional well-being. Researchers have developed therapies aimed at reshaping nightmares, such as imagery rehearsal therapy, where individuals visualize a more positive version of the nightmare while awake, helping to reduce its frequency or intensity. In recent years, scientists have even begun experimenting with ways to influence dream content through sounds, smells, or gentle suggestions given during sleep. It's early days yet, but the idea of guiding the dream world is a tantalizing one. Imagine being able to practice a speech, face a fear, or simply enjoy a flying tour of an imagined city while your body rests quietly in bed. Ultimately, dreams remind us that reality, at least as the brain experiences, it is flexible. They blur the line between fact and fiction, between memory and imagination. When you're dreaming, you accept the strange and the surreal without question. A purple sky, perfectly fine. A talking goat, not worth a second thought. Your brain doesn't just go along with it, it creates it. And when you wake, you carry a piece of that inner universe with you, even if you don't remember it. The dreaming brain is not separate from your waking self. It's another mode of operation, one that's rich, imaginative, and strangely honest. It may not always make sense, but it's yours. And somewhere deep inside, while your conscious mind rests, your sleeping brain continues its quiet, surreal, nocturnal storytelling, one dream at a time. The world of dreams is a testament to the brain's unending creativity, a final beautiful illusion before you awaken to the next. The world of dreams has receded, leaving you in a space between wakefulness and sleep. Now, as your thoughts become more lucid, we turn to the grand interconnected illusion of social perception. This is where your brain takes all of its predictive interpretive machinery and aims it at the most complex thing in the known universe, another human being. This is the moment when you realize that your reality isn't just a solo production. It's a massive collaborative effort. Imagine walking into a crowded room. There's laughter in one corner, someone arguing softly over a phone call near the window, and a cluster of people telling stories around a table. Instinctively, your brain starts doing something rather extraordinary. It builds mental models of the people around you. It figures out who might be listening, who's tired, who seems awkward, who's pretending not to be. Without thinking, you begin assigning motives, feelings, and personalities to everyone. It's like your mind is constantly auditioning for the role of psychic detective, guessing what other people are thinking and feeling based on almost no data at all. This remarkable skill is called social perception, and it's something the human brain is unusually good at. We are, after all, social creatures. Our survival has long depended on our ability to understand and predict the behavior of others. Whether we're cooperating to build a shelter or figuring out if someone's about to throw a spear, the ability to interpret other minds, to read faces, tones, gestures, and context is something that develops early and operates nearly all the time. One of the foundational concepts in understanding this process is known as theory of mind. This is the capacity to recognize that other people have thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and perspectives different from your own. It might sound obvious, but it's not something we're born with. Most children develop a basic theory of mind around the age of 4. Before that, they assume everyone sees the world the same way they do. That's why a 3-year-old might cover their eyes and believe you can't see them. In their mind, if they can't see, then you can't either. But once this ability kicks in, it becomes second nature. You begin to anticipate what others might know or want or fear. You start to understand when someone is joking or lying or being polite. And just as importantly, you begin to care what others think about you. Social perception doesn't just help you decode others, it's also the root of self-consciousness. The brain seems to have a dedicated network for this kind of social thinking. Regions like the medial prefrontal cortex, the temporal parietal junction, and the posterior cingulate cortex light up when we think about other people's beliefs and intentions. These areas help us take the perspective of others, empathize, and navigate complex social landscapes. They're like the backstage crew managing the props and lighting for the ongoing play that is human interaction. A little-known fact from history is that the ancient Greek philosophers debated the nature of empathy with Plato, suggesting that true understanding of another's feelings was an almost divine act. Modern neuroscience now shows us that it's just a complex and powerful function of a well-developed brain. Of course, the system isn't perfect. Your brain's eagerness to read other minds can sometimes go a little overboard. This is especially evident in something called the hyperactive agency detection device. A mouthful, but an entertaining one. It refers to the tendency to assume intention behind ambiguous events. If a shadow moves suddenly, you jump. If a rustle comes from the bushes in a forest in Oregon, you assume something or someone is there. Better to mistakenly believe there's a threat than to ignore a real one. This bias towards spotting agents even when they might not exist may have helped our ancestors survive in a world full of predators and rivals. It also explains why we sometimes see faces in clouds or believe our computers are out to get us when they freeze right before a deadline. Your brain can't help but anthropomorphize assigning human characteristics to non-human things. That's why we name our cars, yell at our phones, and feel personally offended when the printer jams. It's the brain's social machinery working overtime, trying to make sense of a world full of things that don't actually have minds. Another entertaining example of this is the Heider-Simmel illusion. In a classic psychological experiment from the 1940s, Researchers showed people a short animation of simple geometric shapes, just a few triangles and a circle moving around a screen. Despite the lack of detail, viewers instinctively described the shapes as people. The big triangle is chasing the little one, or the circle is trying to escape. Even with no faces, no voices, no story, the human brain made a story. It couldn't help itself. This storytelling impulse extends to real life. We interpret tone, body language, and expression to build narratives about others, often without even realizing it. If someone crosses their arms, we might assume they're angry. If they avoid eye contact, maybe they're guilty. But of course, someone might just be cold or shy or thinking about lunch. The brain likes to guess, but it doesn't always guess correctly. Facial expressions are one of the most direct channels of social information, and your brain is fine-tuned to pick up even the subtlest twitch of an eyebrow. The fusiform face area nestled in the temporal lobe is specialized for recognizing faces. That's why you can spot a friend in a crowd in Times Square, New York, or recognize a celebrity from a grainy photo. But this area isn't just about identification. It also helps decode emotion. A raised brow, a squint, a smirk, they're all signals your brain reads instantly, often before you consciously process them. This quick reading of emotion ties into another system known as mirror neurons, discovered in monkeys and later studied in humans. Mirror neurons are brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you see someone else perform the same action. If you see someone stub their toe, your mirror neurons for pain may activate just as if you'd stubbed your own. These cells are thought to be part of the neurological foundation of empathy. They help you understand others by simulating their experience inside your own brain. Empathy is a powerful tool, but it's also selective. Your brain is more likely to empathize with people who look like you, think like you, or belong to your group. This tendency, sometimes called in-group bias, can be both helpful and harmful. It builds social cohesion and trust within communities, but it can also lead to stereotyping and exclusion. The brain's social machinery, while sophisticated, is still built on ancient foundations. The ongoing academic debate is whether our inherent biases are something we can truly overcome or just something we can learn to manage. Interestingly, humans seem to have a built-in desire for social understanding, even in infancy. Newborns prefer to look at faces over other objects. By a few months, old babies can distinguish between friendly and unfriendly social interactions, showing a preference for helpful characters. As we grow, we continue honing these skills, learning the subtle art of reading intention, deciphering sarcasm, and navigating the intricate dance of human communication. And yes, sarcasm is its own special trick. It requires you to process the literal meaning of a statement, detect a mismatch with tone or context, and then reverse the intended meaning, all in real time. Not all brains find this easy. Some neurological conditions, like autism spectrum disorder, affect social perception and make it harder to read between the lines. But even within the general population, the ability to detect social cues varies widely. Some people are natural mind readers, others not so much. Then there's the matter of inner dialogue. We often talk to ourselves in our heads, rehearsing conversations, imagining scenarios, or replaying awkward moments with fresh embarrassment. This internal monologue is part of what helps us model not only other minds, but our own. It allows us to simulate how others might react, what they might say, and how we might respond. Your brain is running many soap operas all day long, casting and recasting people in different roles: friend, rival, mentor, stranger. All of this constant social modeling burns a lot of brain power. Studies using brain imaging show that even when we're at rest, the brain's default mode network is highly active. This network includes regions involved in self-reflection memory and imagining other perspectives. Essentially, when you're doing nothing, your brain is rehearsing social scenarios, reflecting on past conversations, or preparing for future ones. It's like a mental rehearsal space that never fully shuts down. But for all its sophistication, the social brain is still subject to quirks and errors. One common mistake is the fundamental attribution error, our tendency to explain other people's behavior in terms of their character rather than the situation. If someone cuts us off in traffic in Dallas, we think they're a jerk. But if we cut someone off, it's because we're late or distracted. This bias helps us simplify the social world, but it also skews our judgments. And then there's spotlight bias, the belief that people are paying more attention to us than they actually are. You might feel like everyone noticed that awkward thing you said or the stain on your shirt, but chances are they didn't. They were too busy worrying about their own awkwardness. We're all starring in our own mental sitcoms, rarely tuning into anyone else's channel for very long. Despite all these quirks, the brain's social skills remain one of its most impressive features. They allow us to cooperate, compete, build civilizations, and write long, rambling bedtime podcasts about brains. Every glance, every nod, every raised eyebrow is processed, interpreted, and woven into a constantly evolving story about the people around us. The human brain didn't evolve in isolation. It evolved in groups, in families, tribes, communities. Understanding others was never optional. It was survival. And while today's social landscape may involve more emojis and fewer saber-toothed tigers, the underlying machinery hasn't changed all that much. Your brain is still trying to read the room, anticipate reactions, and keep track of who said what during the last Zoom meeting. It's a dance of intention and interpretation, played out billions of times a day in conversations, glances, silences, and thoughts. And you're not just a participant in this dance. You're also the choreographer, constantly adjusting your steps in response to others. So even when you're alone, your mind isn't really alone. It's filled with imagined conversations, reflections on past interactions, and rehearsals for future ones. The social brain never really rests. It's always weaving the tapestry of connection, trying to understand others, and just as importantly, trying to be understood. It's a beautifully complex system that makes life possible, and in a very real way, it is what makes life worth living. It's a subject of deep philosophical discussion, and the work being done in this field is so new that the conclusions are still being written, a grand academic mystery that you, as a human, are an active part of solving every single day. Your understanding of social perception has brought us full circle from the outer world to the inner workings of our minds. And now we stand on the precipice of our final descent. We have traveled through the landscapes of sight, where reality is a painter's canvas. Sound, where the world's symphony is a personal mix. Touch, where sensation is a story told in neurons. Memory, where the past is a living, shifting narrative. And the self, which proved to be a masterful, beautiful fiction. We've seen how time bends to our will, how dreams are a testament to our brain's wild creativity, and how our social world is built on a foundation of brilliant biased guesswork. But now, we must tie all of these threads together to reveal the greatest illusion of all consciousness itself, consciousness. The feeling of being you right now in this moment is the grand finale. It is the comprehensive, all-encompassing experience that integrates every single one of the smaller illusions we've explored. It feels so real, so undeniable, that it's difficult to even question it. And yet scientists, philosophers, and thinkers from every corner of the globe still struggle to define it, let alone figure out where it comes from. There is no consciousness center in the brain, no single neuron or network that lights up and says, "I am here." Instead, what we call consciousness is an emergent property, a result of countless processes working in parallel. It's the product of the brain's tireless effort to build a single coherent and useful model of reality. And it is in a profound way the most compelling story the brain has ever told. Think back to the first night we began this journey. We said your brain doesn't just record the world, it creates it. We discussed the predictive processing model of the brain, the idea that your mind is constantly making hypotheses about the world and only updating them when there is a mismatch. Well, consciousness is the ultimate output of that model. It is your brain's final best guess about what is happening both inside and outside of you. It takes in all the fragmented data, the photons, the sound waves, the pressure on your skin, and weaves them into a single seamless narrative. That narrative is your waking reality, and it's so good, so convincing that you never question its truth. It's an act of brilliant, beautiful, and necessary deception. Consider how the brain smooths over imperfections. Your blind spot, the saccades in your vision, the split-second delay between a sound and a sight. All of these are real neurological glitches, but your conscious mind never sees them. The brain just edits them out, patching the holes and stitching the scene together so you have a continuous flowing experience. Consciousness, then, is an edited version of the truth. It's the highlight reel. It's the brain's way of giving you a simplified, manageable version of reality, so you don't have to deal with the overwhelming chaos of raw sensory data. Without this editing, the world would be an impossibly complex, flickering, and confusing mess. But with it, you can navigate a crowded street in Tokyo, hold a conversation in a busy cafe in Paris, or simply read these words. Consciousness is the user interface, and the brain is the operating system, running a billion calculations in the background. This is why your sense of reality is so personal. No one else has your exact combination of memories, emotions, and past experiences. No one else has your brain's specific set of biases or its unique internal narrator. So while we all perceive the same objective world of trees, mountains, and oceans, our conscious experience of it is entirely our own. Your memory of your first day of school in London is not just a recollection of facts. It's a story infused with your unique feelings, your personal narrative, and the subtle ways your brain has re-edited it over the years. Your sense of self, that stable, continuous feeling of being you, is a story your brain tells to give you a sense of purpose and continuity. It's a story that your brain's interpreter is constantly writing and revising, giving meaning to your actions even when the meaning that isn't truly there. This brings us to a deep and ongoing philosophical debate, one that has occupied great minds for centuries, from René Descartes' famous "I think therefore I am" to the modern work of neurophilosophers at universities like the University of Cambridge and Yale. The question isn't whether you exist. Of course you do. The question is, what is the nature of that existence? Is consciousness a separate, non-physical thing, a soul in a machine? Or is it entirely the product of the brain's physical machinery? The vast majority of modern neuroscientists and cognitive scientists lean toward the latter. The evidence we have gathered on our journey from split-brain patients to optical illusions suggests that consciousness is the brain's most compelling and convincing act of creation. Some might find this idea unsettling. If consciousness is just a construction, does that make it less real? Does it devalue our experiences? The answer is a resounding no. A story can be an illusion, but it can still hold profound truth. The story of who you are, the story of your life, the story of the world as you perceive it, it's not a record of objective facts. It's a living, breathing narrative, and it's the most valuable thing you have. It gives you purpose, meaning, and a sense of connection to others. It allows you to love, to create, to feel joy and sorrow. These emotions are not illusions. They are deeply felt physical and chemical realities that are inextricably linked to your conscious experience. The brain's illusions are not meant to trick you. They are meant to help you. The predictive processing model allows you to navigate the world quickly and efficiently. The narrative self provides you with a stable identity. The filtering of sensory information keeps you from being overwhelmed. All of it, from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, is a beautiful, elegant, and practical solution to the fundamental problem of existence. How do you take in an infinitely complex universe and make it meaningful and manageable for one small 3-pound brain? The answer is you create a reality that works. So as you lay there now preparing to sleep, let the knowledge of this grand illusion be a source of peace, not anxiety. The world outside may be chaotic, and your mind may not be the flawless mirror you once thought it was, but it is something far more amazing. It is a work of art. You are not just a passive observer of a cold, objective reality. You are an active participant, a co-author of the beautiful, intricate story you call life. Each breath, each thought, each feeling is a brushstroke. You are the painter and the painting. You are the storyteller and the story. You are the dream and the dreamer. And now your journey is complete. You have traveled inward, a journey far more epic than any trip to the stars. You have met the quiet magic of your mind, seen its flaws, and understood its brilliant purpose. There is nothing left to do but to let go. Let the colors of the day fade. Let the sounds of the night be just sounds. Let your sense of self dissolve into the comfortable darkness of sleep. The magnificent show you call reality has ended for the night. And now the true magic begins. The unconscious mind, that deep, mysterious ocean, is waiting for you to dive in. Rest now. Rest and sleep.